Hello everyone, this is Lodius from Deepwood, and this video is meant to give you a brief overview for how to play the Tactician Rogue class in Rift. As always, I encourage experimentation with the specs and constructive criticism of my videos. Some links to the Tactician specs are in the description below, so I'm going to start off with a rundown of each of the most important abilities you'll be using, and then follow it up with some actual gameplay footage so you can see how it all ties together. So we're going to start off with Torrents. Your Torrents are going to be your main attacks and your primary source of DPS. These are channeled attacks. You can move while channeling, and they hit up to 8 targets in front of you, up to 30 meters away, and they hit an area 8 meters wide. At least I think it's 8 meters wide now. To maximize DPS, you're going to have to alternate between your different Torrents. So your first Torrent is Glacial Torrent. Now later on I might call this the Ice Torrent or something like that, so don't get confused. So on top of the regular damage it does, it's also going to apply a stacking debuff to the targets that it hits, which will stack up to 7. The debuff is called Glacial Chill, and what that is going to do is increase the damage of your next Torrent, which is Infernal Torrent. So this does damage just like the Ice Torrent, except that when you have stacks of Glacial Chill on your target, this Fire Torrent is going to hit harder per stack. And that's from talents that you get that increased damage. So at a full 7 stacks of Glacial Chill, the Fire Torrent is going to hit its hardest, and then as you channel the Fire Torrent, each time it ticks damage, it's going to pull stacks of Glacial Chill off the target, and over the course of the channel, the damage will slowly wind down. So if you start at 7 stacks of Glacial Chill, and then you channel down to 3 or 4 stacks before switching back to Glacial Torrent again, that'll help keep your damage a bit higher than just channeling Glacial Chill stacks all the way to 0. And we'll watch that happening in the gameplay footage here in a minute. So your last Torrent is Necrotic Torrent. This one basically operates just like your Glacial Torrent. It does the same base damage, with the main difference being that it doesn't stack any stacks of Glacial Chill on the target. As you can see from the tooltip, however, once a target reaches 30% or below, Necrotic Torrent starts hitting 20% harder. Now with talents, this gets increased to 60%. So anytime you have targets below 30% health, it's kind of a no-brainer that you're going to be using Necrotic Torrent to finish them off. So as part of the Tactician spec, you'll have a talent called Expanded Torrents. Now this is important because it's the way you're going to generate combo points in order to do the different finishers. So the way it works is that each time you cast a Torrent, no matter which Torrent it is or how long you let the channel go, it's going to apply a stack of Expanded Torrents. So even if you cut a Torrent channel off early to cast something else, you still get a stack of Expanded Torrents. So this will stack up to 4 times, and then for each stack, you'll get an additional combo point when you use a combo point generator. So let's say I have 4 different Torrents, I cast 4 different Torrents, and then I have 4 stacks of Expanded Torrents. So now I'll cast my next ability, which is Empyrean Bolt. Now normally, according to the tooltip, you'd only get 1 combo point, but because of your stacks of Expanded Torrents, you're going to get that base amount of 1, plus an additional point for each stack of Expanded Torrents. So 4 stacks plus Empyrean Bolt will instantly give you 5 combo points. So once you've got your 5 combo points, you can use some of your finishers depending on which situation you're in. So your first finisher, and probably the most important one, is Torrent Primer. As you can see here, for each combo point you use, you get a 30-second buff that increases your Torrent damage based on the amount of points you use. So 5 stacks is a 40% increase in damage for your Torrents. So this is a pretty big, this is an important buff. During fights, you're going to want to keep this up pretty much the whole time. So basically what you would do is you would get your 4 stacks of Expanded Torrents, then you would, by casting your different Torrents, then you would cast Empyrean Bolt to get your 5 combo points, and then you'd cast this to get your increased Torrent damage, and then you'd go back to casting Torrents again. And also another huge note, every time you cast a Torrent, you're going to get a stacking debuff on you called Torrent Overload. Basically what this does is it makes the cost of maintaining Torrent channels go up with each stack. Eventually they're going to stack up to the point where they drain your energy really fast, and you won't be able to maintain your Torrents for very long. So casting Torrent Primer rips debuff stacks off of you based on the number of combo points you use. So 5 combo points will take 5 stacks of Torrent Overload off. So eventually you're going to want to be using Torrent Primer maybe a little more frequently so you can get rid of some of those stacks. So your next finisher is Necrotic Ray. This is your AoE finisher, and again, more damage per combo point, and this hits puts damage on up to 8 targets around the enemy that you cast it on. So make sure that whoever you cast it on has a few other targets around it, so you can kind of maximize the damage from it. This has a slight cast time on it, so make sure you're not trying to move while you're casting it. So your next finisher is Empyrean Ray. This is different than Empyrean Bolt, so don't confuse the two. Empyrean Bolt is a combo point builder. Empyrean Ray is a finisher. Empyrean Ray is just like Necrotic Ray, except it only hits a single target. It hits harder on a single target than Necrotic would on a single target, but not by much. So make sure you're only using your Empyrean Ray on single targets. So let's say you're running as attack and you're killing some trash mobs, and one of the trash mobs is extra strong and stays alive a lot longer than the other smaller, weaker ones. Once you have your 4 stacks of expanded Torrents, you Empyrean Bolt to get your 5 combo points, and then assuming you already have your Torrent Primer up, and there's only one mob left alive, that would be a good time to use your Empyrean Ray to DPS that single target. All 3 of those finishers, Torrent Primer, Necrotic Ray, and Empyrean Ray, are going to give you this buff, Primer Amplification. So as you can see, it's another 30-second damage buff for 10% more damage. So the faster you get your first finisher off, the faster you can get this up and get that increased damage. And this will be refreshing itself as you do your finishers in between your Torrents. Here's another ability I use, although not as frequently as my Torrents and finishers, Infernal Beam. As you can see by the tooltip, it deals damage to whatever enemies are in between whatever target you put it on and yourself, up to a maximum of 8 targets. So sometimes this is a good ability to use right at the beginning of a pull when you're giving your tank a second or two to get some threat. Other than that, I don't use it very often, but you're welcome to experiment with it. Always try and cast it on the target that's furthest away from you so that that beam passes through as many targets as possible. So like Infernal Beam, Necrotic Core is a good ability to use while you're still letting your tank gather some threat. This has a 25-meter range in all directions from wherever you drop it, so make sure it's close enough to your enemies to hit them, and make sure it's far enough away from trash mobs that you don't accidentally pull them. This will add some nice extra damage on top of your Torrents in AoE situations where you have a lot of NPCs. 1 or 2 NPCs not so much. I end up not using this in the gameplay footage later on, as the expert dungeon mobs die extremely fast anyway, but try to keep this one in mind. So then your last 2 abilities are your cooldowns. This one is Battle Remote. It's a 20% damage increase for 10 seconds, not on the global cooldown, so you can cast it in between Torrents or something, get it up really quick. I'll usually save this for when I already have my Torrent Primer and Primer Amplification buffs up, or for some kind of a burn phase when I need that extra DPS, like when some ads pop out on a boss or something like that. You'll save it for a situation like that to burn those ads down. And then finally, you have Power Core. Now, Power Core has a 25-meter range, so wherever you set it down on the ground, it won't move after that. So make sure you're close enough to your enemies for them to be affected by it. This increases damage taken by whatever enemies are affected by it by 10% for 15 seconds. It does not stack with other power cores. It does not stack with wild growth, so keep that in mind when you're deciding when to pop it. Make sure your raid is spreading these different damage buffs out so you get the most benefit from them, the ones that don't stack together. And usually some kind of raid message macro showing everyone that you just popped it is helpful as well. And I'll oftentimes combine Power Core and Battle Remote together to get a huge burst in damage. And again, that's after my Torrent Primer and Primer Amplification buffs are up already. So that's it for abilities. Let's take a look at some actual gameplay footage and we can kind of see how all of these abilities come together. So here I am in Exodus, and you can see I'll start off with Glacial Torrent and then Fire, back to Glacial, Fire again, 5 combo points. Empyrean Bolted, and I put up my Primer, Torrent Primer, and then I did a Necrotic Torrent there at the end. Glacial, Fire, Necrotic there again. Empyrean Bolt, 5 combo points. Just refresh my Primer, Torrent Primer. Glacial, Fire, Glacial, Fire again. Empyrean Bolt, and I use a Necrotic Ray as a finisher. Then I start running because the tank doesn't have threat. Glacial, and then I Necrotic Bolt. They're below 30%, so I start Necrotic Torrent, excuse me, to finish them off. So here I am in Golem Foundry, and you can see I'm doing the same thing. It's Glacial, Fire, Glacial, Fire, until I have my 4 stacks of Expanded Torrents. Then I Empyrean Bolted, got my 5 combo points, put up my Torrent Primer, start over again, switch back and forth until they're below 30%, then it's Necrotic Torrent until they die. Just keep doing that, Necrotic Torrent again, finish them off. Now I've already got my Torrent Primer up, so there I just threw up an Infernal Beam on the closest target, which is not what you want to do, so you can see I derp it up sometimes. Switching between Glacial and Fire again until I have 4 stacks, Empyrean Bolted, and I just did a Necrotic Ray as a finisher. Here I go again, switching between them, 5 combo points. Glacial, Fire, Glacial. Now they're getting below 30%, so I should switch to Necrotic here in a second. And there I go, finishing them off. So in this situation, you can see I already have 5 combo points, so all I gotta do is cast my Torrent Primer right away, and then just launch right into my Glacial and Infernal Torrent rotation. There's Glacial, Fire, Glacial again, Fire again, 5 combo points, Necrotic Ray as a finisher, back to Glacial, Fire, and then switch to Necrotic because they're getting below 30% to finish them off. There's 1 mob left. I have 4 stacks of Expanded Torrents, so I got my 5 combo points and did an Empyrean Ray because there was just a single target left there instead of a Necrotic Ray, which is your AoE finisher. So here I am in Empyrean Core doing the same thing, switching between Glacial and Fire, 5 combo points, put up my Torrent Primer, used Necrotic Torrent there to finish those little mobs off, and I still got a mob up. And I added a K alert there at the bottom. You can kind of see those stacks of Glacial going up and down right above my power core indicator there. Then I'm just finishing off with Necrotic Torrent here. Now this is a good opportunity to let you know a couple other things about the Tactician spec. There's 2 other talents you should have. One is Auxiliary Plan, which is going to increase your damage by 6% for 10 seconds after any time you crit. So that should pretty much be up the entire time that you're fighting. And then you have another ability, or another talent called Conservation of Energy. That's an energy kickback. So that's going to give you 4 energy back for every crit. So the more targets you're actually hitting, the more chances you have for crits, and the more kickback you get, and the longer you can maintain your torrent channels. So the more targets you're hitting, the more efficient the spec becomes. Here I am, I got my 5 combo points. Use my finishers, and then I just keep switching between Fire and Glacial until he's below 30%, Empyrean Ray, and then I finish off with Necrotic because he's below 30%. So here I am in Empyrean Core again, getting ready to fight. I already have 2 combo points up, so technically at this point I would only need to cast 2 Torrents, get 2 stacks of Expanded Torrents up, and then I could cast an Empyrean Bolt to get my 5, which is I think what I just did there. And you can see I'm switching back between Glacial and Fire again until I get 4 stacks again, 5 combo points, Necrotic Ray to hit both targets, Glacial, Fire. You can kind of see I'm trying not to bring my stacks of Glacial Chill all the way down to 0. I'm trying to make sure that they stay up a little bit. That helps keep the damage of your Infernal Torrent a little bit higher. And again, I put up my Torrent Primer, Glacial, Fire, Glacial again, Fire, 5 combo points, Empyrean Ray, and then I should use Necrotic. Actually I didn't, I used Glacial, which is kind of a derp. Infernal. Now I finally figured it out, now I'm using Necrotic like I should be. So you can see I derp it up a little bit. Not the end of the world, just keep on practicing with it and you'll get better. So that's it for Tactician. Pretty simple spec once you understand how the abilities work and how they tie together. So thank you very much for watching.